for his de-expedition. Stan, we see you good. Can you talk to us and see if you're running well?
Can you hear me?
Sounds lovely, sir.
Okay.
Let me get you so you can share the screen and take off.
Okay.
Stan's W5GO.
K5GO.
K5GO. I always do that. It's always W's. K5GOs. And out of Arkansas. So we let them cross the border virtually for the day. I have turned on your sharing, sir, so you should be able to pick up a share to make that happen. And he's here to talk us about DX operations. I see it. We need to go full screen on that. We're looking good.
Okay. Can you see it?
I can see it.
Okay. Are we on the air?
We are live on the air with all the folks across the country. So take off and enjoy. It's your hour. Do with it as you wish, sir. Thanks for coming.
Okay. Thank you very much. In this slide, you see front and back of the two QSL cards. If you see ZF9CW or here ZF9CW or ZF5T, it's probably me operating or another operator if we're doing a multi-operator contest. To give you a little background, in 2015, my wife and I went to visit our son, Kevin, in 5DX, who lived on Grand Cayman. We went to see him and his family and our grandchildren. And we took a day trip for 1 day and 1 night and went to see one of the other Cayman Islands. There are 3 of them: Grand Cayman, Little Cayman, and Cayman Brac. So we went over to Cayman Brac for the day, spent the night, looked around the island, saw lots of for sale signs on the lots. And of course, I got excited at the thought of, in my retirement, having a place to operate where with a simple station and not having to put up and climb 150-foot towers. You might have a lot of fun with in the contest world. So we came back home, and I kept communicating with a real estate person that I had met when we were there for that 1 day. Eventually, we bought a lot, maybe 2 or 3 months after we got back. We drew up a little simple house plan, found a local contractor, and had a house built that was completed in 2016. So I took the local radio test, which is the equivalent of the general exam. And by having passed that test and having a place of residence on Cayman Brac, I was able to get a ZF9 call sign instead of the normal ZF2 that's issued to visitors. So I chose ZF9CW, was issued that call sign, and then last year I applied for a club call sign for the BRAC Radio Contest Club. And after conferring with independently with N5DX and CT1BOH, who both mentioned ZF5T as a good call sign, I kind of decided I wanted the ZF5. So the question was what letter after that. So anyway, I got independent confirmation from those two that ZF5T would be a good call sign. And so that's what was applied for. I've got a bunch of pictures that I'm just going to talk as I go through these pictures. They're not in any particular order. But anyway, this is a picture of the back of my car, and I applied for and got issued ZF9CW as an amateur radio plate, which I'm not sure is exactly kosher, but nor was it kosher 20 years ago when I had K5GO on 2 different vehicles legally licensed, till they caught me when I went in to renew one, or actually change one of them to a different car. This picture is, well, that smile on my wife's face. You could probably talk for 10 minutes about that smile on her face, but I'll just tell you a little story. When we first started going down there, which was like 3 years ago, After going down 2 or 3 times and having this amount of luggage absolutely to the max, 2 check bags each, 2 carry-ons, the bags filled to at least the limit of 50 pounds each. After 2 or 3 trips, I told my wife, I said, the next time we go, it'll just be a little carry-on with a few little personal items. We won't be taking all that luggage because I've got everything I want down there. Well, that's gone way that we've made a half a dozen trips just like this one since, with the going to the limit and even over the limit on the weight on some occasions. Well, this picture was taken about 10 o'clock at night on our last trip. American Airlines, the flight from Miami to Grand Cayman was late, and it was late enough that we missed the last flight to Cayman Brac on Cayman Airways. American didn't help us much. Everybody went home. There's a maintenance worker or security person there in the background, but the airport is empty. And we're sitting there wondering where we're going to stay for the night so we can then come back the next day and try to get on Cayman Airways to go to Cayman Brac. So I'm not sure how genuine that smile is, but I can say that she's put up with me and my crazy hobbies for 45 years, and I'm very appreciative to have her. Okay. I have 2 hobbies. I'm not going to go into too much having to do with golf, and actually golf intertwines with ham radio in the next slide. But I play golf generally from about the 1st of April until the 1st of November. And then I turn off golf, don't think about it for another 5 or 6 months. And I think about ham radio exclusively. I'm always thinking about ham radio 12 months a year, every day. But I pretty much forget about golf starting about the 1st of November through the 1st of April, where I'm thinking about ham radio. So this first slide is teeing off at the #1 hole at St. Andrews, and this, along with Kevin asking me to be his partner at the WRTC in Moscow, are probably the 2 highlights of the 2 hobbies. So I played at St. Andrews a couple years ago, and that was really fun. So here's that first tee shot. Okay. Now, this next one is a golf shot on Cayman Brac, and the problem is that I was wanting to put up a beverage that needed to go through about 300 feet of dense, thick, jungle-like terrain. I tried crawling through it. I tried everything to get that beverage wire through or over that jungle. So I had the bright idea that if I took a fishing reel and taped it to about a 3 or 5 pound sledgehammer, and then tacked the fishing line to a golf ball, drive a tack into a golf ball, that I could hit that over this jungle and then go on the other side and attach a wire to it and pull it for my beverage. So anyway, this is kind of a funny video that Rita took while I was doing this, and it worked. Okay. And I wish I could concentrate that much on every golf shot. That was kind of an important one. If I had concentrated on every golf shot like that one, I'd probably play better. This is a picture of some Cuban refugees, Maritime Mobile, about 250 yards from the house. This buoy that you see here, we've actually gone out there snorkeling before, so it's not that far from the house. And we've seen maybe 3 or 4 instances just while we were there of Cubans that are trying to find a better place for a better life. When we get to the house, we usually put up the hammocks. I'm not sure we spend enough time laying in those hammocks, but it is nice when you're hot and tired and been working on the antennas all day to go out and lay in the hammock. Initially, my plan, initially I had great results with a 14 AVQ at another location while the house was being built. And it probably would have been the 2016 WPXCW contest. And we rented a place. I put up a 14 AVQ next to the water, 100 watts TS590 from the kitchen table in the rental place, and did very well. So I told my wife, I said, I'm not going to need anything of any consequence. I mean, I'm going to have a lot of fun and just put up a simple antenna and everything will work out great. So initially the plan, it went from there to having monoband verticals next to the water for 40 through 10, and then to do something else on 80 and 160. So when the house was built, I got the utility company to install a utility pole, which would not rust, wouldn't have to be guyed, and it'd be something where I could pull up a wire antenna or pull up a vertical. So in this picture, you see my 160 meter, the initial 160 meter vertical. And if we look at the next slide, there's a closer view of it. And it's got a big coil up about halfway. It's probably 70 feet tall. And here's a picture of the coil before we went down there. This was on our kitchen countertop. So the coil is like 9 or 10 inches in diameter, about 20 turns. And that 70-foot vertical worked very well. And this is the operating position. The house is small. Believe it or not, it's only 600 square feet, but every inch of it is used. We've got a decent sized bedroom, bathroom, kitchen, and living area that's all open. And the radio stuff is confined to a closet that has French doors that open up to this room that's 5 feet deep and 9 feet wide, I believe. So I've got an 8-foot table in there, all the radio stuff on it. I can close the doors up if we were to rent the place out, and nobody really knows that all this stuff is there. Some days you don't know what you're going to get. You wake up one morning and it's dead calm, like that picture of the sunset with that the neighbor took with the 160 meter antenna on the other side of the house. And then some days you wake up and it's like this. One day when I had nothing better to do, I decided we needed a sign for our place. So I got some 2x4s and poured a concrete slab and found a couple of tiles from the house that had not been used. Found a local artist and had this sign made, and it seems to be holding up pretty well. I had somebody take a picture of it the other day. To the left of it is a rock that I found that I loaded up in the trunk of the car and stood up because I thought it looked like a razorback. So the antenna situation went from a 14 AVQ next to the water to monoband verticals for every band next to the water, to deciding that I wanted as much as possible to confine the radio antennas to the one location next to that telephone pole. I confirmed that a a horizontal antenna, if you got it high enough, would beat the vertical by the water. It wouldn't be omnidirectional, which is a good thing to have, but it was significantly louder, and especially in the directions where you weren't going over water with the vertical. Verticals are great as long as I'm going towards Japan, the United States, or Europe, but not so good towards Africa, South America, etc., South Pacific. So I bought 60 feet of 25G from a company down there that installs 25G that they put some kind of TV service on, and wireless TV service, and put a pulley at the top of the utility pole, and at the bottom of the utility pole put a winch on a tree about 100 feet away, and a hinged base on this 25G tower so I could lower it down. And I built a couple of homebrew tri-banders. These tri-banders are 2 elements on 20, 3 on 15, and 5 on 10. Really looking forward to 10 meters opening, because I think that'll those antennas are going to work really well when 10 meters opens. And then I have the tower is shunt fed for 80 and 160. Sometimes I put up a separate 80-meter antenna, which I'll show you in just a minute. And then I have one vertical out by the water, which is a full-size 40-meter vertical with a couple of elevated radials, and that works really well. I think that in one of the, it must have been a CQ Worldwide contest, but in one of the CQ Worldwide contests, I was using in the assisted category, but I believe I should have looked this up before, but I believe it was like 37 or 38 zones and 140 countries with a single quarter wave vertical. There's a better picture of the tower and the 2 tri-banders. Those tri-banders are 10 total elements each with about a 21-foot boom. This spring or February, I was contacted earlier in the year by W5SJ, a longtime friend who lives in Fort Smith, Arkansas, and he and Bob Alphen, K5GO, go on a lot of de-expeditions together. Bob's a world-renowned de-expeditioner, and so they inquired about maybe coming down and operating with me in the ARRL CW DX contest in February, 3rd weekend in February. So this is Bob and Stan, and Bob and Stan are trying to come up with an operating schedule where everybody, we wanted 2 people on at all times and didn't want to wear anybody out. So we spent probably an hour coming up with an operating schedule that we thought we could live with. And this is Stan and Bill Priakas, W5SJ. Actually, during the contest, Bob wanted to take a picture, and we stopped for about 15 seconds and let him snap this photo. At one point in time, we were really worried about 10 meters because the Cayman Islands are pretty close to the U.S., and sometimes 10 meters will open for the Caribbean stations that are farther south and not open for us. But we did get an opening on 10 meters, and I think this was probably the beginning of that opening when it started to open up, and we switched over to 10 meters, and I took a picture of this. So the 340 number, which was for the last 10 QSOs, that would indicate that you logged 10 stations, that the last 10 stations logged were an average of 10.5 seconds each. And the trick is to make that 340, or to get that rate to go over here in these other columns and try to maintain some high rate for the last 100 or the last hour's operation. I don't think we ever got to 340, but probably over 200. This is another picture of Bob, K4UEE, and I'll tell a little story about Bob. I like to, when I'm operating, I just keep cranking the speed up. I love to operate at a pretty high speed. And at one point in time, Bob was sitting in this position, and I was over here, which we'll call this the run station and this the multiplier station. But so I was sitting in this position, and I had gradually cranked it up to where I was working people at 48 words a minute. And at some point in time, I looked over to Bob and I said, Bob, do you think I ought to slow it down to 46? And Bob's got a very dry sense of humor and a good sense of humor and very dry. And he looked at me with a little wry smile on his face and he says, you know, he says, I think if you knock it down to 46, you might pick up some lids that you would have otherwise missed. So that was actually a highlight of the contest for me, having him say that. And this is the results. We had some difficulties. You can see with our 3830 posting that we operated 45 hours and 40 minutes instead of the 48 hours. So we were 2 hours and 20 minutes short. The power went out during that time when we were off the air. And about the time we would get radios set up to try to operate with low power on batteries, then it would come back on and then it would go back off. It was just a nightmare. So we had no internet, we had no electricity for well over 2 hours and lost that amount of operating. But we had a great time and we won the low power division for this last ARRL contest. This is the 80-meter antenna that I normally put up if I don't shunt feed the tower. And it's just a quarter wavelength of wire that starts up about 50 or 55 feet on the tower and comes down and then back to the base of the tower. And I use the same radial systems that I use for 160, the same radials as used for 160 for the 80. Put a hairpin at the feed point to bring the resistance up from about 15 ohms or whatever it is to 50 ohms, and it works really well. This is I've got an audio clip here of a couple of minutes of JAs calling on on 80 meters using that antenna.
Stan, we're not picking your audio up there. I don't know where that went. But...
Oh, not, but you can hear me now, right?
Yeah, I can hear you, but just can't hear the audio out of the system.
That's not good. I don't like that. Is there something I can do about that, Mark?
Maybe flip that switch we did yesterday on the audio settings for the let the computer audio go through.
Right. Do I need to disconnect to do that?
No, I think what you said, you found it in, where was that? The audio settings piece.
Darn. No. That's not going to work. Mark, can I disconnect and you fill in some time?
Sure, you can do that, or let's see, remote control. I'm trying to figure out where that was we had yesterday. That
I'll find it.
that piece on the audio. Yeah, if you want to find it, or we can just zip through and pull that up at the end if you want to. That might work out.
You fill in time and I'll find it. I'm gonna log out and log back in.
Okay, very good, very good. Stan, yesterday we did a demo on that. There's a special setting on Zoom that allows you to chase that piece. It is. Let's see what he's got. We'll obviously take questions from Stan later on, but if you have some questions, feel free to bring them on now. We'll queue them up for ready to go. We're looking for a way. We've got a couple DX Engineering gift certificates to give away. So while we're sitting here, if you wish to be involved in a DX Engineering giveaway, you can send an email to president@hamholiday.com, and we will include you in that giveaway piece for the DX Engineering gift certificates. But if you want to send an email, we got a lot of people that are saying comments or they're having issues with their logins on comments. So if you can just send an email to president@hamholiday.com, we'll track those and look at some gift certificates later on in the day. Did you find that as you came back in?
No, not yet.
Okay, let's see. It should be. Zoom.
Okay, just a minute.
You find it back. It's in your share. When you click the share button, when you go through here.
Okay, you've got it. You've got to allow me to share.
When you click share on the bottom, it will say share computer sound.
You've got to allow me to share.
Yeah, you're good. You should be there. And on the bottom of that message, it says share computer sound. There's your screen.
I want to get there.
I know it.
Eventually.
I know it. There you go. Bring that. That's right. And scoot forward. You should have it.
Okay, let's try this again.
Got it.
That gives you some idea of the pileup that gets generated when you call CQ on 80 meters early in the morning. This is a this is a YouTube video from a JA7. I don't know his call sign. It says Cayman ZF9CW 3.5 megahertz CW and JA7. So this is what I sounded like on the other end. Whoops. Hold on a minute. Doesn't sound like that guy has a receiving antenna. He's probably listening on his transmit antenna. This is VU2 GSM on 80 meters. So the receiving antenna that I used for that contact was a 30-foot loop of wire. It's like maybe something similar to a K9AY with no preamp, and VU2, and I also worked a different VU on 160 listening on that antenna. So it's a lot of fun from down there. This was very exciting. This was in the CQ contest the last CQ contest in 2019, and this is VK9CZ, and I think he was very surprised when I called him. You could almost hear the surprise in the way he was sending his CW. So this was long path toward the end of the contest. And I'll let you listen to this. That was an exciting contact. Long path, 80 meters, Cocos Keeling on in the CQ Worldwide DX contest. So I decided that hitting golf balls over the jungle and trying to run wires through all this awful terrain was maybe not the best way to go for my beverages. And since the most important direction is Europe, and since the shoreline runs toward Europe, I decided to try a beverage that would maybe be 1,000 feet long or longer and get it back from the water so it wouldn't be washed out to sea, but maybe 20 or 30 feet from the high tide mark, and just lay it on the rocks. The it's not like 7 Mile Beach here. In most places, it's very rocky. So if you go back about 20 feet from the water's edge, you see this kind of rock. And so I just laid the wire along the going towards Europe. And effectively, I think it's about like having a fairly low beverage, not a beverage on the ground, but because there's a lot of insulation between that wire and the actual earth. So I took garbage bags with me, and we had just had a big storm with waves rolling in, and I picked up all these flip-flops on the way to put my Northeast beverage down, and decided to, instead of throwing them in the garbage dump, that I'd tack them to this tree in the yard and make a flip-flop tree. So that's what that is. Interestingly, there are wild parrots on Cayman Brac, and it's not every day that you see them, but maybe once every trip that we make down there, we have an encounter with the parrots. So this is a little video I took of parrots in the tree in our yard. Whoops. And why didn't it open up? There we go.
There's two of them.
Here we go. There are the parrots up there. This is something else I picked up along with the flip-flops putting up my beverage. I found this beautiful conch shell. It's really colorful. And speaking of conch, that's conch steak and fries at one of the local restaurants, Star Island Restaurant. It's really good. Okay, this is a picture of my lone vertical or lone antenna next to the water at moonset. It's a full-size 40-meter vertical. This is another YouTube video, and you know, I didn't, never in listening to this video did I hear myself sign my call sign. And normally I do that after at least every other contact, but I worked several people here and didn't sign my call sign, so I'm questioning whether it was even me or not. But anyway, DL8LAS said this is ZF9CW on 160. And it's a pretty good signal for 160. Okay, here's a JA who posted a YouTube video of me on 160, and this is the comment that he made. He said, Stan has been working JAs on 160 every night from November the 16th. Many JAs had a good success to work ZF9CW on 160. No words to express our sincere thanks. And anyway, I think that before I got on 160 down from ZF land, that there had been very few contacts made between JA and ZF. I'm gonna go out on a limb and say that there probably hadn't been a dozen contacts between JA and ZF. And I had such good success. I worked a couple hundred of them in just a few days, you know, like 30 or 40 or 50 a day for several days on in a row. So this is a recording that this guy made. And that's enough of that. So in most of the contests, after most of the contests, I try to post upload my log to LOTW. I'm not really that much of a DXer anymore. I don't send out cards to try to increase my DXCC totals, but I do have fun looking at LOTW and see how many countries are confirmed just through LOTW. So those are my numbers for 160, 129, 146 for 80, 180 for 40, 179 for 20, 161 for 15, and only 50 for 10. But this is all from almost all from a few contests and not chasing DX, so to speak. So anyway, it's a lot of fun. These are the contests that I have worked since 2016 with ZF9CW. Usually try to go down in October, come back for Christmas in December, then leave again in January and come back toward the middle of March. I'm not sure what's going to happen this year. We've got it, it's a little bit up in the air as to what our schedule might be, but I know one thing, that we're going to be here through the middle of November because my daughter's having a baby in early November, and we're not going to miss that. This is something to just I've got a lot of pictures, but they're not going to be as good as this one, as this little video on Cayman Brac. I want to tell you something about this area right here. There's a bluff that runs down the middle of the island that's probably 2 miles wide and then goes the length of the island, which I think is about 12 miles. And there's a little lighthouse here. It's kind of a joke. It's only about 30 feet tall. But right here, it's a 140-foot drop to the water. So I went up there one day and I borrowed a battery from someone who told me it was all charged up and ready to go. And I put up a, we'll call it a vertical with 2 radials, except I turned it upside down. So I've got 130 feet of wire hanging down off the side of this bluff. And then up here, I've got the 2 radials, 250 feet. And then I've got a coax running down here feeding it there. So it's an upside down vertical, and I modeled it and it indicated that it would be very, very good. And it was very good, I think. The SWR was great, but I took a transceiver up there, hooked it up to the battery, plugged the coax in, turned the radio on. I hear all these Europeans, and it's very quiet. There's no noise. And the first time I hit the paddle, and with 100 watts, the radio goes dead, the computer goes, everything goes dead, and the battery wasn't really charged. So I went back up later and could not find my wire. So I have an idea that somebody in a boat came along here, saw that wire hanging down and started pulling on it. It all disappeared. Anyway, this is a video that shows a little bit of the island. I've got one more. I really don't like microphones. I don't like phone contests, except I've found a way to like phone contests, and that's to have a computer voice do the talking. So I've got like 40 or 50,000 WAV files with every call sign is in the master database, if you're familiar with that. So I can essentially work a phone contest without having to ever talk on a microphone, which is just fine with me. But so this is a sample of the computer audio, and I hope it's not too loud. You might turn the volume down, and just in case this blows you out, I don't know.
Thanks, Zulu Foxtrot 9 Charlie Whiskey.
Okay. Do we have questions?
We do. So you're saying you have 50,000 audio files?
One for every call sign. Like if K5GO calls me, I can push a button and call CQ, obviously, CQ contest, ZF9 Charlie Whiskey. And if K5 Whiskey Echo calls me, I type his call sign in, hit the enter button, and M1MM, and it says Kilowatt 5 Whiskey Echo 598. And then he gives me his report, and I push another button, and it says, thanks, ZF9CW. K5 or N50T calls me, and I push a button, I type in N50T, push the button, N50T 598. So I don't have to say a word, which is great.
I'm stunned. What a way to automate a way to do that. I thought about doing it in, with just a text to audio, but if you just pre-created all those audio files, yeah, you're ready to go. Anybody who had any questions, please feel free to add them to the chat or send them as an email to president@hamholiday.com. We've got one question from Randy, and Randy's used to piling all his antennas on a vehicle and roaming around the countryside. He wants to know about your grounding situation at the big ranch out there in the water area.
Grounding. I've never been someone who is paranoid about grounding anything. When the house was built, I had the contractor run a heavy copper cable from the electric panel. The house is elevated. I've never had any RF problems. which I understand and I think I've experienced before when I'm not at ground level and I've had a radio station like on a second floor. So the house is elevated because of the potential of a big wave coming in and taking it and flooding the house. But other than that, you know, I don't spend a lot of time worrying about grounding. I suppose that I get some kind of a decent ground system having radials buried in the sand or dirt coming away from the tower, but I'm not an expert on grounding, so I don't have a lot to add.
You do have a system ground for the building, but you've not done anything additional, shall we say, to add to that.
Right.
You're at sea level, so that should be sufficient. The safety grounds are there. My question out of this whole process is, small island. A, what's the other population on the island? B, what kind of building codes or problems did you run into as we put this thing together, and what kind of supplies can you get and can't you get?
There's a local hardware store regarding the supplies. There's a local hardware store that's it reminds me of a hardware store that they had at in Harrison, Arkansas for years. I assume it's still there, Miller's Hardware. But anyway, it's a hardware store that has everything, and everything is in disarray. And you trip over things trying to get down the aisles because they've packed in the equivalent of what Walmart might have in a space that's 1/10 the size. So, but you can find almost anything you want there. Anything that you would find at Home Depot, you would find at Tibbetts Enterprises, and they've pretty much got an exclusive on that type of stuff.
You sound like you are contesters. The DX Association is one that's pushed this forward, thanks to Kim Elmore and his efforts to get you coming here. I appreciate that. So you're actually pushing more in the contest realm. The numbers of countries don't matter, even though there's 213 or whatever it was.
Yeah, I'm primarily a radio contester. I enjoy working DX, obviously, and especially I like to work lots of countries in the contest because they're multipliers. They increase the score. But as far as getting up at 2:00 in the morning to work a new country on 80 meters, I'm not going to do that probably. But it's fun. I mean, when you work something exotic, when you get on the radio and work India on 160 meters, which I don't think you're going to do very often from Arkansas, that's exciting. That's exciting to make that kind of contact. And so I have fun with ham radio, both in operating contests and in building stations and building antennas. The antenna, I haven't purchased a commercial antenna in probably 40 years. They're all homebrew, so I enjoy doing the work to prepare for the contest probably as much as operating the contest.
One thing that struck me, and I saw your homebrew antennas, homebrew monobanders at height, at altitude, look like there are a lot of effort involved to get those up there. And I understand your hinged antenna piece, but I would think that those would be very vulnerable in the hurricane story. I know we got one coming into South Texas. Do you worry about that a lot?
Sure. If the way I think about it is that the antennas are made to survive. They're as light as I could make them. They're probably not rated at over 80 miles an hour. So I'm not trying to build an antenna to survive a hurricane. I'm taking the risk that if a hurricane comes through, it's all gone. I'm not to put up a tower and antennas with the thought that you're going to survive a category 3 or 4 or 5 hurricane would be a big deal. And so I can put up 60 feet of 25G and a couple of homebrew tri-banders And if it all blows away, I'll put them up again. But it's hopefully not going to happen during my lifetime.
That's what they all say is
Yeah.
probably the right answer. Now, the other question is, surely that boom did not come in those suitcases that you showed with your lovely wife in the
Well, the top suitcase on that stack that you saw was actually a golf bag, a carry bag for golf clubs. So there was one golf club in there, so I could hit a string over the brush for my beverage, and the rest of the golf bag had 49.5 pounds of aluminum tubing. And I think that I could get something like 46-inch pieces of aluminum tubing to fit in that bag that would normally have a regular golf bag inside it. It's like a travel bag for a golf bag. So yeah, it had 50 pounds of aluminum tubing, all cut to about 47 inches.
And then were they swedged, or did you have little spacer pieces?
No, the tubing is, if you were to go buy aluminum tubing, it would come in 1/8 increments starting at 3/8 of an inch. So 3/8, 1/2 inch, 5/8, 3/4, 7/8, and so on, 1 inch. And the wall thickness is 0.058. So it telescopes nicely with a 9-inch or a 9 thousandths of an inch clearance. So you can put one size into the next.
I understand. Very good. Very good. Let's see. That one question came in from Page Master. I noticed one thing during contests, hams come out of the woodwork, but during non-contest days, hardly any hams on the air. And the other half of that is those contesters are ruining everything. Is the other half that I hear all the time. I love the juxtaposition.
Well, I'm guilty as charged. I do not get on the radio. I've finally got a station here at my home in Siloam Springs. Just within the last 2 months, I put up a 24-foot tri-bander that's got 3 elements on 20, 4 on 15, and 5 on 10, 12 elements, 24-foot boom. And I put up a nice 40-meter dipole with coils. I even put up a 6-meter beam on this 70 feet of 45G at the house. And I'm sitting here in front of a Kenwood transceiver and a solid state amplifier, and I just don't get on the radio much. Maybe someday I can get into the habit of getting up in the morning and coming in and working a few people on the radio before my wife gets up or something. I don't know, but my main interest is radio contesting, and it's kind of like the golf. I do like to play golf on a regular basis, but I really like to play in a golf tournament. So that's where the competitive part comes in.
That's at least you're consistent between the two hobbies. That's a good way to put that one. Yeah, I've heard both arguments on that one. Just makes me laugh either way. And the right answer is key the radio and do what you want to, and make it work out. Got one more question, which I think is funny because Stan and I played an hour with this yesterday. The question is, what headset are you using? And I know we went through about 8 or 10 yesterday. Which one are you using? What's the one that you're using that actually worked for you? I have to look because he's a CW guy.
It's called a Corsair.
Corsair.
It's the one I've got on right now.
That was a question coming through there. Lots of thank yous, and appreciate the wonderful session. Is there anything else you wish to add for the day, or you got it all in?
I can't think of anything. Appreciate you having me, and we're heading to Oklahoma here in a little bit to celebrate our grandson's 3rd birthday. So we'll be in Tulsa here in a couple of hours probably.
Well, tell him happy birthday from all of us.
Okay.
We're happy to do that. Thank you very much again for coming, Stan. Appreciate your efforts.
Thank you. Bye-bye.